One sec. Now,
okay.
We're live. Here we go.
Let me see if I can share.
That's what I'm going to do.
My groups. Yeah, I can see this going in. So I'm just going to share this feed into my page.
Same thing. Right, copy, share now.
I'll put it in a few of the groups I'm in as well.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. This is great. And I'm going to do the same thing. Right, that's one. Let's share into one of my groups here. That's another one. Let's get this one on. Let me just share here. It's live. Okay. And finally, share here into my page. Right. Okay. Perfect.
Right, that's got a few of them in there.
Fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, very good evening to you, and a very good evening to you all. My name is Jonathan Waterman. I'm an award-winning wedding and events Toastmaster, coordinator, planner, celebrant, auctioneer, consultant, and a booking agent for all other services. And I've also now taken up into sales and marketing also as a consultant. I'm delighted to be interviewing this evening the UK's most versatile pianist, Simon Jordan. Simon also can entertain you on the violin as well as many other instruments. I've known and worked with Simon for many years, and he is indeed very passionate about what he does. Simon is always very keen to work closely with clients and nurture them from day one and on the day. Simon never disappoints. He performs with the utmost of passion and professionalism. Now, here's a little bit about Simon. Yes, definitely, the UK's most versatile pianist. Simon Jordan can play any tune, Bollywood, Broadway, classical, and modern hits. An incredibly talented piano player with years of experience performing all over the globe. Recommended by major wedding venues across England and Wales. He has played at prestigious venues such as the Royal Festival Hall. He's had a solo concerto there. The Dorchester and the Ritz Hotel in London, as well as for the BBC. Fully self-contained with a variety of instruments to suit the occasion, or can play the piano at your venue. There's no other musician in my mind whose real versatility like this as Simon. You can find him on his business page at facebook.com, violinist and pianist, and also his website, celebratewithmusic.co.uk. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just before I start interviewing Simon, I just want to say we are still in this COVID-19 crisis. Please be careful, be safe, and we all spare our thoughts to all of those that have lost their lives. That's 34,500 here in the UK, and all of those throughout the world. So spare your thoughts to all of those poor souls that have lost their lives, and we hope that they are all resting in peace. So please say your prayers, obviously, so they are in peace now. So this evening, I just mentioned, I'm very honoured that Simon is happy to be interviewed by me. So let's get on with it. Simon, a very good evening to you.
Evening all. Hi. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be having you this evening, Simon. Thank you. First of all, if I can kindly ask you just to please reiterate and tell people who you are and what you do and did prior, please.
Yeah, the name's Simon. I am a violin player and a piano player, and I play a few other instruments as well, but those are the ones that I would claim to play well before having a few drinks. I have played the violin since age 5 and the piano since age 6, and you can probably tell by looking at me that it has been a few years since then. I studied at the Royal Academy of Music at the University of Bristol. I became a Radio 3 producer for the best part of 18 years. Also worked across Radio 4 and Radio 2 and everything, pretty much everything the BBC does, television, magazines. But then about 5 years ago, the wedding business really started to take off for me. So I took the opportunity to take voluntary redundancy and came out and did this full time alongside a little bit of teaching as well. So I teach at a couple of local schools, but most of my time is spent traveling around the country, entertaining people. So that's what I like to do. I think music is such a personal thing. It is great to play something actually that a bride or a groom wants to hear, as opposed to just trotting out a list of 30 songs and saying, right, please pick from this, because I think those days are gone, really, where you just play, Here Comes the Bride and etc. So what really makes me smile is seeing, a smile on a bride and groom's face, or even a little tear in the eye as I play the tune that they've always wanted to hear as the bride walks down the aisle. So it's just, music has that way of just getting to the people's souls in a way that nothing else really can. So and what greater role for music than in a wedding ceremony?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, no, you were talking about the BBC. How did you get into the BBC, and what's the story there?
Always wanted to work for the BBC. I did a bit of work experience for them when I was at university. I was a runner on Blue Peter. In fact, I appeared on Blue Peter. Well, at least my bits of my violin did. The late great Karen Keating played my violin at one point. And then since going to the Blue Peter studio, really at age, I think I was 13, I was just completely bitten by the showbiz bug, and ended up at BBC straight from university. I started at Radio Times. I went on to television, working in a channel which is now called BBC 4, and then moved across to BBC Radio, working in Radio 3 mostly, but also across a wide range of different projects, working in Scotland, in Wales, in Bristol, and pretty much all around the country in the way that I guess the BBC uniquely does.
That's absolutely fantastic, though. So I mean, obviously, so you've spanned, you spanned far and wide, obviously, throughout radio, throughout TV, through other channels, which is fantastic. You were mentioning before when I asked you the question, you were talking about brides and grooms at weddings, etc. And you're saying the days are gone of just playing, obviously, willy-nilly. Am I right in saying the bride's kind of has a very, very personal perspective of what she wants? So am I right in saying it's up to you sort of to tailor-make her solution, what she wants to make her day special?
Absolutely, and I think that's where a live musician really comes into their own, There's something, you find a lot of brides who have actually thought really hard about the music that they want to walk into. Some have known which song they want to walk into since since 12 or whatever. They just have a really, really good idea and a set idea of what they want to hear. And the joy of a live musician, as opposed to a recorded track, is that you can tailor the music. So you ramp up the volume, you ramp up the speed, you ramp up the intensity when the bridesmaids walk in, and then when the bride and her father or whoever, her attendant, enters, you then give it a bit more sparkle as well. And at that moment when she arrives directly at the front, that's when you wrap it up and you perform the end of the piece at the right time, as opposed to having some spotty individual at the back fading down the CD player or an iPod. So it's just it's that sort of experience that you get from wedding professional musicians that you don't necessarily get from other musicians. So it's worth paying that little bit extra for someone who has played at weddings before, as opposed to just going and finding, an A-level music student or a music college student from somewhere. Because somebody who's just had that experience, in the same way that for you, Jonathan, you've got your experience as a celebrant and a Toastmaster, and you wouldn't just encourage people just to grab somebody who's got experience of presenting a business meeting. It's tailored to weddings. We live, eat, and breathe weddings, and we're used to the challenges that weddings can throw uniquely at us.
Well, that's absolutely right, to be honest with you. I mean, it's from what I'm sounding by you, obviously I know you're very, very passionate. You love what you do. You live and breathe music. So value-wise to the client, I mean, you live and breathe music, your credentials, you've worked for the BBC, you've been on TV. But, I mean, what other value would you say to the client was unique to you? What unique selling points are yours?
Well, my background is, as I say, across Radio 2, Radio 3, and actually a bit of Radio 1 as well. And I am familiar with just a huge range of music, of different genres, of different styles. And I can play pretty much any of that on the violin or the piano. So as I say, a lot of musicians out there will say, well, sorry, mate, I only play, classical. I only play this, that, or the other. The violin's a classical instrument, et cetera, et cetera. Rubbish. If you want to hear a little bit of Beyonce on the violin, then absolutely, I'll do that for you. It's not my wedding, it's your wedding. And if you want whatever you want to hear, I will play for you, because that's what makes it uniquely yours. In the same way that you've personalized your dress and your food and your celebrant and your venue and everything else, your decor, you should personalize your music as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of obviously me knowing about you for a long time, I mean, your repertoire is massive. I mean, you do anything from Bollywood, classical, pop. Is that correct? You've got a whole repertoire.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I've seen you at Indian weddings. I've seen you at English weddings, all others, and you're very, very versatile as to their requirements, to their needs, really.
I've played at Jewish weddings, at Greek weddings, Muslim weddings, every single faith and background has. It's been an education for me. It really has, and it's been an absolute pleasure to learn about this. But now, I'm familiar with the cues and all the different arrangements that go into weddings of different shapes and sizes, which again is something you get from somebody who specializes in weddings, as opposed to just a common or garden musician.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I take it, obviously, with the types of weddings you've done, you obviously had your challenges. I take it it's obviously challenged you. I mean, is there any kind of how can I explain it in terms of challenges? What type of wedding actually challenges you the most? Any particular type of wedding?
Well, each wedding for me is a project of its own. So I will say to the bride and groom, look, I'd appreciate having your choice of music by about a month beforehand, because everybody has their own unique musical taste. And of course, when there are two of you coming together, you then bring your own musical baggage with you as well. Plus, there are, musical references that the families have. And equally, there are bits of music that people want to avoid because they associate them with funerals or family funerals or whatever. So each wedding for me is a project in its own right. So I'll ask them for the music about a month out. Now, a lot of people go for the popular things like 1,000 Years, from Twilight, or they'll go for Canon by Pachelbel, or familiar tracks like that. But just about one in every five is just left completely off center, and you want to give that your maximum attention. So I've had weddings completely of computer game music, which has required me to transcribe everything by playing the games, which was not difficult, I can tell you, to play the games for a good few weeks. I've had film music. I've had one that was entirely of Iron Maiden, one entirely of Nirvana. You can do it all on the violin. In fact, the Nirvana one, which was at Missenden Abbey, just down the road from me, involved a groom and a bride who, after the ceremony, actually got onto their guitars and started playing through the drinks reception. A glorious July day, a bit like today, and the music was carrying across the valley there. So I played their choice of Nirvana songs as they walked down the aisle, and then they took over after that.
No, which I mean, and that's a good thing, you know. To be honest with you, I think in this day and age, with all the, you know, with the millennial brides and grooms, people were sort of born between 1980 and 2000. That, you know, the challenges are sort of different to what they used to be. So I think flexibility is a very big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there are so many different now parts of the wedding day that can have music in them, not just in the ceremony, but outside of the ceremony too. And equally, you know, the bride entrance can be anything from 30 seconds to 3 or 4 minutes, depending on, you know, who they want to send down in front of them, how fast they want to walk, etc. So it can all be varied. You can have 2 or 3 tracks to walk into, 2 or 3 tracks to sign the register to, you know, and so on and so forth. I've played with pre-recorded music in the past. People have had their favorite track, but they've asked me to just kind of improvise over the top of it. It's all out there now for the bidding. I mean, there are things set in stone by the government, you know, forms of words, as you know, for ceremonies, and various points at which sacred music cannot be used. You know, music with God in the lyrics or reference to a deity in the lyrics. But apart from that, the music can be used as and when you feel.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Really, you know, obviously you know where to dot the P's and cross the T's, which is obviously that's a sign of a professional. To be honest with you, that's a sign of booking a professional. You know, who will work with you, who knows, you know, who's very, very kind of versed in what he actually does.
I mean, you know, you've got to go in. You cannot be shy. You've got to walk in, as you'll know. You know, when you walk into a wedding venue, you've got to know every professional there, and see the role that they're playing throughout the day, so you don't get in their way and they don't get in yours, and you strike up with the music at exactly the right time. So the celebrant says, "I now present," and you know the form of words that cues you in to perform at the right time, so you don't crash the party. It's those sorts of issues. It's just the experience of knowing what to do and when and who to talk to that really, you know, sets the professionals out, and just means the bride and groom can just kind of get on with their day without worrying, you know, has this person or that person turn up? Is this going to be coordinated correctly, etc., etc.
Yeah,
so someone like you comes in.
Yes, no, absolutely, and I'm glad you you know, you mentioned that point to our listeners, that, you know, just reiterating on what Simon said here. It's you know, you have a professional, you've got the credentials. They'll go for a solution with you. They won't just come on the phone and price you. They'll talk to you about the benefits, what they do, the value, the solution, what, you know, where you want to get to personalize your day. That's the difference when you're dealing with a professional. Now, just to kind of ask you, you've mentioned all about weddings. Can I ask you, have you done much in the way of corporate work or charity events?
Yeah, I've done a few. I mean, I'm primarily aimed at the weddings market. My website it's called celebrateWithmusic.co.uk, but is almost entirely geared at weddings, and also the other string to my bow, pardon the pun, which is teaching. So I have a lot of pupils who join me through the website, having lessons. Well, I've been teaching on Skype and Zoom for years before the pandemic happened. So, but I've played for a few corporate events, obviously for the BBC, many leaving parties, because they know me. But also for Ford, for Daimler, for Mercedes-Benz. I played for a few blue chip banks in London. Yeah, going down the years, quite a few, but they're just not as attractive to me as weddings are, really, because the people attending are not invested in the music that you're going to play, if you know what I mean. Yeah. You are just there to provide background music, which is fine, but you find you really don't enjoy the day as much as playing at a wedding, where, you know, everybody's thought really carefully about the music and where you're going to play and in which locations, etc. So weddings are what really does it for me. You know, I mean, corporate events are easier because you become known and people book you again and again, but of course people only get married once, and so you're always, you know, booked once by somebody, and if you're lucky, you know, a sibling or a guest remembers you and comes back to you at a later date. But so it's more expensive to get for us as musicians and professionals to get wedding bookings, because we just have to go out there and advertise more. But it's just a much happier day, and I always prefer to be playing for a wedding than anything else.
No, well, that's fantastic. You sort of know where your where your passion is, which is absolutely great. Can I ask you? You mentioned earlier, Simon, about your teaching. Obviously you're very, very versed in what you do and everything. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the teaching, about the kind of about the classes that you provide?
Yeah, certainly. I teach three aspects of music. Obviously, my two instruments are violin and piano, but I also teach music theory up to about grade 5, grade 6 level, which is, where the dots go and how they relate to each other and, what music is. I have pupils who are all the way from age 5, and my oldest is an 82-year-old widower, so who took up the violin after his wife died and thought, right, well, how am I going to fill in my time? I've always wanted to play the violin. So I have people coming to me, or I should say had people coming to me before the pandemic struck, from London and from Oxford. I'm halfway in between in High Wycombe, you see. And now I've had, before the pandemic, I had people dialing into me from America and from other parts of Europe. But now everybody's online, and it's not quite the same, but we're hoping to get, as we all are, back in the real world very soon. Tuning people's instruments has been very difficult, in particular because you've had to try, instruct people to tune their violins, etc. But it's the other part of what I do, and it goes really, really well together with the performing, because it just means that I can run my own schedule and organise things the way I want. I also still freelance for the BBC, so I'm often in London working for Radio 4 or for Radio 3 as well. So, it's a nice versatile mix I get each week.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. The way you span yourself and everything. You do your teaching, you play at weddings, you've played at corporates. So literally, nothing's too much for you. You'll go where the work is, really. If the client's right for you, which is really good. So just to kind of ask you then, Simon, you mentioned that you play the violin and you play the piano. Can I ask you, out of the two, what do you actually prefer the most? Do you actually get more one than the other, or is it both the same?
You wouldn't believe how many times people ask me that question. Which one do you prefer, violin or piano? My answer is always, it depends on the mood I'm in. Yeah. Musicians are moody because that's how we create music, I guess. We write stuff depending on the mood that we're in. So it really depends on the venue. It depends on the crowd. It depends on the mood I'm in, as I say, the day of the week it is. I'd love to do both at the same time if I could, but sadly can't quite get the feet working as well as the fingers. So for people who want to book me with a piano as a violinist, I have 3 or 4 different pianists I work with who come with me or under their own steam to weddings. We always find that the violin and piano combination is so much more versatile than the string quartet, and takes up a lot less space, obviously, because there are 2 of you, and it's obviously cheaper too because there are 2 as opposed to 4 musicians. So a string quartet playing Beyonce will always sound like a string quartet playing Beyonce, whereas the violin and piano combination just gets a little bit closer to the original and is just a little bit more versatile. So that's another thing. And if I work with somebody like me who's a violinist and a pianist as well, then obviously we can chop and change between the instruments. But it's amazing what you can do these days, because we all work. I play from an iPad and my pianists play from iPads. And someone comes up and says, "Can you play, I don't know, Halo by Beyonce, say?" And one of us will have it, and we'll just Bluetooth it to the other person, and we'll have it in 10 seconds for you.
Yeah.
As opposed to the old days when it was going through rucksacks to find bits of paper and and books and what have you, breaking your back as you're carrying all this music to weddings. So it's all from an iPad these days. So it's
no, that's good, and thank you very much for obviously enlightening everybody about how it all works and everything, how the instruments work and the way you chop and change between the piano and the violin. you know, and the other people that work with you. So that, you know, that's quite a good insight, actually. A question I've been dying to ask you next is, can I ask you, where does all that drive and passion come from, and what makes you tick?
At the BBC, you know, I joined the BBC back in '95, and it was a very creative job. And over the years, it became significantly less creative because, you know, like the rest of the world, everything started to gravitate to sitting in front of a computer screen with a keyboard in hand and a mouse. You know, exactly what we're doing now, of course. But I got bored with the commute. And I got bored with just sitting in an open plan office with rows and rows and rows of people wearing headphones, not talking to each other, and just editing things to fit into 28.5 minutes, which is, with apologies to the BBC, where we've got to now. You know, everything is done exactly to the right length and to the right shape and delivered in a way that the next person needs it. And the whole creativity of the job was just starting to get a little bit lost. So when that opportunity to do this came along, I've been playing for weddings on and off for a long time. I've been playing in concerts, obviously, for years and years, and teaching a little bit before that. I just thought, right, well, let's go for it. So this was 2014. I've been playing for weddings a couple of years before that, just to start up the business, because I was getting itchy feet by that stage anyway. And in 2014, I thought, here we go, voluntary redundancy. I'll have some of that, please. And there we are. The rest is history, as they say.
No, very, very, very interesting. It's just very, very interesting the way you've actually progressed yourself. You've, you know, and you've moved on and you've enhanced yourself a fantastic brand to a fantastic brand where everybody knows you, which is always a very good thing. Just asking you about weddings events, about the market here. I mean, is there any particular weddings or events markets that you would like to explore further? Or, because I know you're versed in most of them, but are there any you want to sort of, you know, take your vision and explore further into?
Well, yeah, I mean, I traditionally play an acoustic violin, which is the old-fashioned, you know, wooden instrument that you see in string quartets. I do have an electric violin, but there are a lot of electric violinists out there who do light shows, amazingly sparkly things with their presentations, and I'd like to explore that at some stage, if possible. You find a lot of these violinists are blonde and female and look good. Obviously, it's nothing that I can do in that regard, but at least, you know, I can put on a little bit of a show, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I think it's something that perhaps 1 or 2% of brides and grooms will want, because the show inevitably is about them, not about the musician. But yeah, you know, if there is in particular Bollywood, you know, style wedding out there, and they want that sort of light presentation, then I'm looking into doing that. Behind me, I've got some very expensive PA equipment, which I've just started investing in to put that sort of show together as well. But as I say, it's something that a lot of people out there already do. And obviously there is a market for it, but I wouldn't have thought that most brides and grooms would want it. For them, you know, it's not that the wedding is not about music 100%. Music is an important part of the wedding, but amongst many other things as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm always of the opinion that everybody at a wedding or event is equal. You know, we're all there in our professional capacities. We can all support each other if need be. You know, and we're there to work as a team to make the day special for the bride and groom. Is that right?
Absolutely. What you don't want is a bride or groom or even a bridesmaid fretting about, you know, this supplier hasn't turned up, or this person's not talking to this person, or, you know, this person's got the ump with this other person. You know, it's just, you've just got to leave your ego at the door and just get on with making the day the very, very best you can do, not just for the bride and groom, but for all of the guests attending and the other suppliers too. So if you're in the way of the photographer, for goodness sake, get out of the way, you know. And you know, it's that sort of thing. It's just everybody working as a team, because when they do, people work to their best, and the brides and groom are absolutely enthralled with the results. And I think that's what it's all about.
Oh yeah, no, do you know what? I agree with that, because yes, everything's about the bride and groom the whole day. To obviously we work together to make their day special. But if we look sort of further deep into the suppliers that we've just discussed, we can say, you know, if everyone just gel together and the teamwork is there, then everyone can kind of blog about each other and network as well. So you know, you're all going to get mentioned to other people on the various people's networks. So and that could also bring you work. It's more avatars for you, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's this thing called search engine optimization that musicians are traditionally absolutely awful at. That is providing a really good website and getting loads of mentions from other suppliers on their websites, pointing to your website. And oh, there we go. And if you can get that right, and you can behave well and perform well at weddings as well, then everything comes together, and you don't need to be advertising on Google or on Facebook because the traffic comes in your direction anyway, just simply because of the quality of what you do and, you know, the influence you have with other people.
Well, that's absolutely right, because I mean, one or two backlinks straight onto your site from a couple of bloggers that might have, say, a blogger's seen you at a wedding, or this one's seen you at a wedding, or that one's seen you at a wedding. They write about you. I mean, and they're normally page ranks are quite high, especially the bloggers, and that's going to do wonders for you, isn't it? To you know, to hire you on SEO, to get you even higher on the page rankings when people search.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, Google runs on that sort of thing. They're always tweaking their algorithms. They're always changing things around, you know, counting the number of words, counting how many, you know, synonyms you have for the same word on your site, and, you know, how long even people stay on your page is now important. It's all measured by Google. It's all, you know, checked and ranked with other websites and other providers. So anything that you can get from a blogger or from a professional who's been really impressed with your work, if they mention you, they send a bit of link juice, as it's called, in your direction. You'll raise up in the profiles of
absolutely, because these type of people, they won't only, you know, blog about you on their site, they'll also put you on they'll blog about you on Facebook, on Instagram, you know, on LinkedIn. So you know, so it's another avatar, really, isn't it? It's an avatar for business. More business, really.
Yeah, if your presence could be on, you know, in all of these places, then obviously the word gets out, and it does a lot of the advertising for you. And it's the kind of thing that is really taking off now. I think professionals are just realizing the value of SEO and how to get mentions from others, and, you know, how to bring traffic onto their sites, as well as the traditional ways like wedding fairs. I play for Berkshire Wedding Fairs, who are absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
For them. But you know, this is another way of bringing people through the door as well.
Yeah, no, I'll go with your Berkshire Wedding Fairs. I forget her name, but I do know her.
Jackie and Joanne.
Jackie over me. Yeah. I'll go with that as well, because I've had a lot of dealings with Jackie, and they are very, very professional. They look after you. So that's always a show.
They've run throughout lockdown. They've run a virtual wedding fair. They've come up with really, really clever ideas promoting other wedding businesses. They've had weekly pub quizzes. They've had bingo. They just go the extra mile. So if you do, you know, if you're in the Berkshire area, if anyone's listening out there in the Berkshire area, they run their wedding fairs in September and January, and go to their website and have a look. You'll find me playing at the one every September and every January in Caversham, at the Crown Plaza of Reading, and also a few other venues as well. So it's one of many ways that people, you know, get to know you as a wedding professional through wedding fairs, but also, you know, they'll have seen you online as well, and all of that just marries together, if you pardon the pun, and they realize that you're actually somebody to trust and to respect in the industry.
Well, that's exactly it. All comes to trust. That is the thing. It's your portfolio that literally builds the trust. You know, what are you going, you know, what's your USPs, what value can you give, and show your review, show your testimonials. It's all that builds up in the people's minds, that before, you know, just to decide if that prospect's going to contact you or not, really. So no, just to kindly ask you, you know, obviously you've mentioned SEO, you've mentioned Google and everything. What's about social media, things like Facebook and Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn even? I mean, Do you do much on those kind of?
Yeah. All of these, the SEO is called social signals, and they all are taken by Google as giving your brand, giving your business extra credence, extra credibility. If you are posting on Facebook a lot from your business, then obviously your business is going places, and people are listening to what you say. So that brings you up in Google's minds as well. So with things like Pinterest or LinkedIn or any of these sites, they're growing all the time. It's really important for just leveraging your way a little bit higher on Google. Also, don't forget Google My Business, which is an important tool, and checking your search console as much as you can, just to check that there are no spurious entries. I found a bizarre one for a Viagra pill. I think somebody had hacked my website about 5 years ago. I know exactly who it is. It's a rival piano musician company. Anyway, they'd hacked me, and I'd managed to get rid of all of the hacking at great expense. But about 3 days ago, Google result number 40 was for a certain brand of Viagra, which I won't be giving away free at weddings. So I've managed to get that expunged by Google as well. So it's just staying on top of those things, because inevitably, that can bring you down in Google's mind, because your site's been hacked, and there's this page about that. I won't say the V word again, but just sitting in the search results. So it's really, really important just to be on top of your internet presence, and just go through your website and check for broken links. Think, well, how can I tidy up this page a little bit? All of these things just show you, not just to the search engines, but more importantly to brides and grooms out there who click on a link on your site and see that it goes somewhere, and it isn't just to a page that doesn't exist anymore, which makes you seem so amateur.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, it's actually, just kind of elaborate on that a bit more. I always hear of people that are signed up on analytics as well. Indeed, I am too. And with Google Analytics, you can actually, you put the code into your website, and then it tells you where all the sources have come from. Is that correct? It tells you about all the traffic.
You used to be able to get a lot more, but since GDPR came in and other privacy issues, couldn't quite see what people had fed into Google to actually get onto your website. You used to be able to see every single search query that people had put into Google, but unfortunately that's gone away. But it's still valuable data, isn't it, to see where people have come from and what they've clicked on to get to your site. No,
absolutely. No, thank you for your take on your on your marketing and your sales, basically. That's really good. So I just want to touch on this next subject. Can I kindly ask you, have you done much in the way or had inquiries for destination weddings? And if you have, are they challenging?
I've had one or two, but to be honest, I've always said no to them, and that's just simply because I have 3 children who are they're now 11, 13, and 16, but obviously they haven't always been that age, and I've had to have been around here for them. So I've always said no, but it is obviously something that I would be open to in the future.
Yeah,
I've done a few destination proposals. I've played at the foot of the Eiffel Tower on Valentine's Day at 8 o'clock in the morning, absolutely freezing me bits off. Luckily, the answer was yes from the bride to the groom, not from me to the booker. So yeah, I've done a bit of that, but that's as close a destination as you could hope for. That's just a little trip on the on the Eurostar, but there's been that sort of thing, and I got a nice weekend break for the wife in as well there by doing that. But nothing out of the ordinary yet, just simply because I've tried to stay close to home. Yeah,
no, I mean obviously it's that type of thing. The destination when you've done that at the obviously at the Eiffel Tower. I mean that's very prestigious. That's good to show on your portfolio. Did the clients give you a review for that and everything?
Yeah, and there are some photos from the professional photographer who was there. They're on my site as well, so they can all be seen there. It's you know, even in those days, it was about 2 years ago. You don't want to stay around, you know, in Paris doing that sort of thing for very long, because you might get moved on. Because obviously, you know, the city was rather paranoid even at that time. So we had to do it at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So in February, and it was very, very cold. I ended up using fingerless gloves to play the violin, but hey, it was fun. And the great thing about playing for weddings is every single wedding is so different. Yes. You go to work, and it's always enjoyable. You never look at the clock and say, oh, you know.
I mean, well, that's right. I mean, every bride's got a different requirement. Every bride's got a different story to tell. Every bride, you know, the music resonates to them. So, and the good thing is how flexible you are, and you go through their the playlist with them, which is really good.
And also I put up on my website just everything that people have asked me to play in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, so you can go through that as well and see the crazy stuff I've had to do over the years. The computer game weddings, the anime weddings, the Japanese pop music weddings, you name it. It's all been done.
Jack of all trades. Fantastic. Yes. Fantastic. Can I ask you, when it comes to venues, obviously, you played a lot of venues around the UK. Have you found any particular venues, or, you know, I'm not going to ask you to name the venues, but have you ever found venues to be challenging in terms of obviously loading and unloading, and then obviously the staff sometimes can get a bit difficult, a bit shirty with you? Have you had many bad experiences that way on the logistics?
Not really. You have to be as polite as you can be. I mean, it's when you play at a wedding on a piano that's already there at a venue, you always, you know, casually ask the bride or the groom, how often do they tune it? You know, and if the bride and groom say, you know, I don't know, I'll ask, and the people at the venue go, I've no idea. You kind of fear the worst a little bit. So I've had to play some rather out of tune pianos. So sometimes the whole aesthetic of having a piano there and it looking like a piano is lost because the instrument hasn't been tuned recently or hasn't been maintained properly. You know, there's one particular venue I play at with a beautiful white Yamaha grand piano, but just needs some basic maintenance. And I said that to them, till them blue in the face, but they haven't done it, and it's rather out of tune. So you know, you just think, well, if these things had been done, how many more people could they potentially, you know, encourage to book their venues if that beautiful white grand piano was in tune? So it's mainly that. It's just the instrument at the venue is not in tune. I mean, you know, most of the time I notice, but nobody else does. But who knows? You know.
No. You obviously know what to look out for, and having the piano tuned, it's gonna reflect. To be honest with you, it's going to reflect with the pianist really, because as well the pianist can make an assumption as well on the venue, can take a conclusion themselves and say, hold on a minute, this venue's gone the extra mile. They've tuned their piano, so that shows their credibility as well. Gives them even more credibility.
It's something, you know, they should know their local piano tuner, and every piano should be tuned at least twice a year. And if it's if it's at an events venue, then obviously more, you know, frequently than that. It's a job that costs about 50 quid for somebody to do, and you know, it's just being on top of it and just knowing that these sorts of things need to be done. So, you know, for that reason, I would always bring a spare piano with me just in case I get there and the thing sounds like, you know, the piano from the Queen Vic. So I have a, you know, a keyboard in the car, as it were. But in terms of access, you know, the keyboard I use, I can carry, or I have a trolley that I can push it on. So there's never really an issue for me.
No, that's good. I mean, I'm sure you haven't, but have you ever had an instance where all of a sudden you're playing at a gig and you've had problems with your piano, where something may have broken down? Or
I had one episode at the Swan Hotel in Bedford about 3 years ago, when the stand for the keyboard that I was using gave way just as the bride started her walk down the aisle. So I was, you know, playing something, and then suddenly I had to, luckily the instrument still worked, but I had to sit on the floor and play her down the aisle, looking like a sort of, you know, Indian priest or something, just sitting there on the floor. So that was quite embarrassing. But that's been the only thing that's happened so far. Although, no, there was one other time I was playing the violin and my chin rest fell off. And you just kind of, you know, Oh, that's part of the act.
Oh, well, that's it. Sometimes you just got to improvise, and,
Yeah.
and you do that well, which is good. So moving on to the next question for you, Simon. If I can ask you, I mean, now it's an interesting one because I've often had this conversation, I think, with you and many other people that we know. Do you believe the market is very price orientated, or do you think that people are looking for more quality and something different?
I think the market is extremely large, and if you are silly enough to focus on one particular price point, then you do yourself a disservice. Yes, there are a lot of people out there for whom the price is important, and as a musician, you have to say to them, well, you know, there are lots of other musicians out there, but I'm priced at this amount for this reason, you know, because I think this, for these reasons, I am this price. This marks me out as somebody who charges this price compared to this 19-year-old guy who's just come out of, you know, college, who can play, you know, 20 pop songs or whatever. You know, I've got a little bit more experience playing and can, you know, have played at loads of weddings. So there are people out there who will beat you down in price, and you can go with that as much as you like. You can make as many allowances as you like. You can say, well, for that money, you know, I can play for 5 minutes before you walk in as opposed to 20 or whatever. But ultimately, it's tricky. If you know, if you beat down the price too much, people stop respecting you as a professional. And
Correct.
And then, you know, you think, well, you might well find yourself being abandoned later and you know, in the process for somebody who's even cheaper. So if they don't value you as a professional and appreciate the service that you can bring, then they are probably better off going for somebody cheaper anyway.
Absolutely right. I mean, that's always been how I felt about it as well. I mean, it's the best way to be, because you stand out, your credentials stand out, your portfolio stands out, and your benefits stand out, and the way you work with clients stands out. You know, you've got all the attributes, and so obviously you know the type of people you would like to attract, really, and I'm sure you know how to do that very well. So just to move on to the next question. I know this is everybody's involved in this next part of it, and I'm sure we all have. I mean, COVID-19, what type of impact has it had on your business?
Well, thank heavens I've had no cancellations at all. Everything has just moved firstly to September, and now, of course, to 2021. So it's been a quiet year, but because of that, I've been upping my teaching, which is all online anyway. And I'm teaching my students all the way through the summer because they're at home, they're not going anywhere. So they're actually practicing more, and they're more interested in their own instruments. So the other half of what I do takes over from the wedding half of what I do, if you see what I mean. But I love the weddings, and I'll be looking forward to 2021, where hopefully I'll do, you know, twice as many as I normally do, with the quota of 2020s and 2021s all in the 1 year.
Yeah.
The most of the rescheduled ones I find are actually going in on weekdays or on Sundays. So there is that room to take on more, but I don't want to be exhausted and not do my best. So it's just a question of always keeping an eye on the diary and thinking, right, well, that's on that day, and that's on, you know, that's on a Saturday, that's on a Sunday. How much energy will I have by the next day, especially in the summer when it's as hot and humid as it is today? So you've just got to make sure that you do think ahead. And if you think, well, actually, I can't take that on, then you've got to refund, because this is where we are. It is not down to the bride and groom that this wedding is being moved. This is a worldwide situation, and businesses are refunding. EasyJet are refunding me for, well, hopefully soon, for you know, an abandoned trip in half term. You've just got to refund if you feel you can't make it, and that's just one of those things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I believe you've got to be fair. There's all sorts of impacts involved in this type of thing, all sorts of pros and cons, which obviously goes around the market. We see it on all the wedding events forums. People saying you should do this, people saying you should do that. I think you need to do what works for you. But the whole thing revolves around the next question I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Now, a very, very interesting one. Now, I'm quite astounded the figures were so low on this. people taking it. What are your thoughts on wedding and events insurance? Do you feel if more people would have taken it, we wouldn't have had half of these problems?
Yeah. I mean, I insure everything to the hilt. You know, I go on holiday, I hire a car, I get car hire excess insurance as well. You know, so if you do have a prang, then your first £250 of excess is then paid for as well. I believe in, you know, in insurance for weddings. Absolutely, definitely. I don't say that with any sense of hindsight whatsoever. The wedding day is one of the most expensive things as a bride and groom you ever embark on in your life. And there are, I read on Facebook, I've seen these forums, there are so many dodgy vendors out there who will shaft you in these internet days, you know, for whatever, cake toppers, decorations, whatever. It is worth having the insurance from day one. Quick tip for anybody watching, if you go to a website called topcashback.co.uk, you can find that you'll get some money back from purchasing this wedding insurance, and not just for wedding insurance as well, for pretty much anything. My car insurance is coming up for renewal, and with a lot of it, I can find myself getting a discount even off my lowest premiums by going through Top Cashback first. There's another one called Quidco as well. Either of those will actually help you save even more money, and use that for your wedding purchases as well, from the major retailers. You know, if you're buying a honeymoon tickets or whatever, you go through Top. I got repaid £200 today from ebookers through Top Cashback from a holiday that we took last summer. So it's great. It takes a few weeks, months for the money to come back to you, but you do get a discount even from buying stuff from eBay. Go through Top Cashback first, click on eBay, and you get the percentage back. I'm not on commission. I'm not advertising Top Cashback, but I'm amazed the number of people who don't know about these sorts of things.
No, you know, that's an absolutely fantastic insight, and thank you very much, Simon, for sharing that with you know, with our viewers. You know, you mentioned about wedding and events insurance. Just to actually reiterate people that for wedding and events insurance, only 30% of people took wedding insurance out prior to COVID-19. Which I think, you know, which I think is pretty much bad. But the problem is, if people would have taken out insurance, you know, before this episode, you know, a few months before, or even a couple of weeks before, believe it or not, there were some insurance companies that were still covering you for the pandemic indemnity. If there would have been a pandemic, there were certain insurance companies that are actually covering you for the pandemic. Now, it's woken me up a lot. I mean, I tend to say it's a necessity to all my customers, but what I would like to see is, I mean, I don't know if you feel it's the same kind of thing, Simon, or what you think, is that when clients actually sign a dotted line with a venue, because obviously that's one of the biggest expense, is for them to actually, is for the venue obviously to get a signature from the client saying I'm going to produce my insurance within 7 days.
Well, it's the venue that, you know, is the biggest bill, isn't it, for bride and grooms? I would assume, you know, closely followed perhaps by, you know, by catering, if that's a separate entity, and then perhaps photographer, bearing in mind the amount of work photographers have to do before and after. So yeah, absolutely. And the venue, yeah, it would be a brave venue that would turn down a bride and groom on the basis that they hadn't got their insurance. But yeah, I don't know. Is there, you know, maybe this could be in the hands of the local authority. Maybe the registrars could be making sure. That would have to come from the government downwards. But I think insurance is so vital, as I say, because these weddings are so expensive. You know, there are. I won't say which venue it was, but you know, I was at a wedding fair 2 years ago for a very, very prestigious venue in Buckinghamshire, and I overheard how much they charge for a day, and my jaw just hit the ground. And you know, if the pandemic struck or something else struck and your wedding was cancelled, you'd hope to see some of that back, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to a particular venue down in Gloucestershire, and I know very, very well. And I've got to say, you know, hats off to them, because they've been from day one for the last couple of years. They've literally been asking clients to actually sign a dotted line to say about insurance, literally to say that, that they kind of more or less insist that you take wedding insurance for your function, to cover you against any eventualities. And I personally think that's a good thing. I just think it's a good thing that they're doing that.
Absolutely. How many of us take out travel insurance? I'd love to know the percentage. I certainly do.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Similar sorts of expenses, really. If you break your leg on the ski slope and cost or whatever, for getting home. So it's something that should be more widely publicised. I completely agree with you, Jonathan.
No, thank you. Just a couple of more questions here for you, Simon, and thank you very much for answering that in relation to insurance. So that was a fantastic insight to the viewers here to take something out of that. Can I kind of ask you, how do you personally see the future of the weddings and events industry? What's your take on it?
I think in the same way that so many of the main aspects of life are being personalised, the ceremonies for funerals and births and christenings and that sort of thing, the wedding ceremony is going to become more and more individual and tailored to each couple. Which is where I come in, really, as somebody who does that, musically speaking. People are now being able to get married after dark. Haven't seen many people doing it yet, but they are, and there will be other allowances made by the government and by venues to allow people to do it. There will perhaps be some sort of relaxation in what goes into the legalities of the ceremony, or perhaps then people might be allowed to have a wider choice of music. I don't know what's out there, but I think it's all in the personalizing. You personalize every other aspect of your life, don't you? The internet browser you're looking at me now through, you've personalized. So, it's just another aspect of life which is going to be tweaked and twisted for each person taking part. So,
no, I agree with that, especially on what you're saying on twilight weddings. It's I think we've got that flexibility. I also think, like you think, there'll be a lot of outdoor weddings. I think we'll see a lot of change. And I think, to be honest with you, I think the change can only be for the better. I think some of the change will be for the better.
I think it will. I think it'll reduce prices as well, because there'll be more people getting married at different points of the year and on different days. And if you want to save a few quid by getting married, say in November, and not be worried too much about what's outside, then you can now do that. And there'll be other relaxations which will allow you to save money elsewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thank you very much for obviously sharing your insight into that question. And finally, Simon, the last question I'd just like to ask you: how would you like to close the interview? Is there any more words you would like to say?
Well, I should have got my violin here, but it's so it's so warm and humid up here in my attic here that I couldn't, for the life of me, pick up a violin. It's just so. But if anybody wants to hear me play, I'm very happy to play live for anybody who wants to dial in and hear me on Skype or Zoom. Equally, if they want to inquire into tuition, then do so as well. And just to reiterate my main website, I've got a few like yourself, Jonathan, but my main website is celebratewithmusic.co.uk. I've worked with a variety of wedding professionals, Jonathan, of course, and others. And I've got a few links on there to other people I would recommend as well. So do have a look and a listen. And if you'd like to hear me play live, very happy to do so for free.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. So, Simon will show you, obviously, how professional he is. He'll show you the value of his service to you, and how it can enhance your day, which is a lovely thing, really. It's a lovely touch, in my view, having a pianist or violinist. I think it's, that's my point of view. So I'd like to say to everybody here, thank you all very, very much for tuning in this evening, to listening. You can leave any questions in the comments that you would like to ask myself or Simon. And I want to say a very, very, very big thank you to Simon for taking the time this evening to be interviewed. I hope you enjoyed it.
I have. I've watched your other interviews with absolute pleasure. So it's good to add myself to the great and the good who've taken part so far. And I hope you do this and carry on doing this even after the end of the pandemic, Jonathan. It's very entertaining to watch.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Thank you again, sir. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.